Jason had always been fascinated by urban legends. As a child, he devoured ghost stories and tales of the supernatural, his imagination running wild with images of haunted houses, cursed objects, and restless spirits. As he grew older, his fascination only deepened. He spent countless hours researching local legends, visiting supposedly haunted sites, and documenting his experiences. For Jason, the thrill of the unknown was irresistible. It was during one of his late-night internet searches that he first stumbled upon the story of St. Anselm's Church. According to the legend, the church, located on the outskirts of a small town called Ashford, had been abandoned for decades. It was said to be haunted by the ghost of a preacher who had gone mad and killed his congregation before taking his own life. The townspeople avoided the church, claiming it was cursed, and anyone who ventured inside never returned the same. Intrigued, Jason dug deeper into the history of St. Anselm's. He discovered that the church had been built in the late 1800s and had once been the heart of the community. However, in the early 20th century, a series of mysterious deaths and disappearances plagued the congregation. The final straw came when the preacher, Father Marcus, reportedly went insane, slaughtered his parishioners during a midnight mass, and then hung himself from the bell tower. The church was promptly abandoned, and it had stood empty ever since. For Jason, this was the perfect opportunity to explore a genuine haunted site. He planned his visit meticulously, gathering all the necessary equipment: a high-powered flashlight, a digital voice recorder, a camera with night vision, and a notebook to document his findings. He decided to go alone, believing that a solitary visit would allow him to fully immerse himself in the experience without distractions. On a stormy night in late October, Jason set out for St. Anselm's. The drive to Ashford was long and uneventful, the countryside shrouded in darkness, and the occasional flash of lightning illuminating the road ahead. As he neared the town, the rain began to fall in earnest, drumming against the roof of his car and creating a steady rhythm that only heightened his anticipation. He found the church easily enough. Its spire loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. Jason parked his car at the edge of the overgrown churchyard and took a moment to steel himself before stepping out into the rain. The wind howled through the trees, and he pulled his jacket tighter around himself as he made his way to the front doors. The church was in a state of severe disrepair. Its once majestic facade was now covered in ivy, and the wooden doors were warped and weathered. Jason pushed them open with some effort, the hinges protesting loudly. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. He switched on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness and revealing the dilapidated interior. Jason took a deep breath and stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the vast, empty nave. The pews were rotting, and the remnants of stained glass windows cast eerie, fragmented patterns on the floor. He could feel the weight of the place pressing down on him, as if the very walls were watching. He started his exploration methodically, moving from the entrance to the altar. As he walked, he recorded his observations, noting the oppressive atmosphere and the strange symbols etched into the wooden pews. He paused occasionally to take photographs, the flash briefly illuminating the shadows, before plunging the room back into darkness. It was as he approached the pulpit that he first noticed the temperature drop. The air grew colder, and he could see his breath misting in the beam of his flashlight. He shivered, pulling his jacket tighter, and continued his investigation. The pulpit itself was an ornate structure, carved from dark wood and adorned with intricate designs. On it lay an old, leather-bound Bible, its pages yellowed with age. Jason reached out to touch the Bible, hesitating for a moment before lifting the cover. As he flipped through the pages, he noticed strange symbols scrawled in the margins, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the flickering light. His curiosity piqued. He took out his notebook and began to sketch the symbols, hoping to research their meaning later. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the church, causing Jason to jump. He swung his flashlight around but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The wind outside had picked up, rattling the windows and doors. He tried to shake off the unease that was creeping over him and continued his exploration. As he moved deeper into the church, the whispers began. At first, they were soft and indistinct, like the rustling of leaves. But as he ventured further, they grew louder, more insistent. He stopped, shining his flashlight into the shadows. But there was nothing there. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling slightly. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by a deep, guttural laugh. Jason's heart raced as he spun around, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the darkness. Standing in the pulpit was a figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes glowing a sickly yellow and its mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. "Welcome," the figure hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "I've been waiting for you." Panic surged through Jason as he stumbled backward, nearly dropping his flashlight. He tried to run, but his legs felt like lead. The figure moved toward him with an unnatural grace, its skeletal hand reaching out. No, this can't be real," Jason muttered to himself, but the pain in his chest was all too real. He screamed, falling to the ground as the room spun around him. The last thing he saw was the figure's face, twisted with malice, before everything went black. The next morning, the townspeople found Jason's car parked outside the church, but there was no sign of him. They searched the building, but it was empty, save for the old Bible lying open on the pulpit, its pages now stained with fresh blood. From that day on, people avoided the church, fearing the preacher's ghost and the fate that had befallen Jason. Some said they still heard whispers and laughter on stormy nights, but no one dared to find out if the legend was true. Weeks turned into months, and Jason's disappearance became a cold case. His family and friends were left with nothing but questions and grief. The town of Ashford fell back into its quiet routine, the legend of St. Anselm's Church fading into the background of daily life. But for Jason's younger sister, Emily, the mystery was far from over. Emily had always looked up to her older brother. They had shared a love for the supernatural, spending countless nights watching horror movies and telling ghost stories. When Jason went missing, Emily was devastated. But she also felt a deep, unshakable conviction that his disappearance was more than just a tragic accident. Determined to find out what had happened, she began her own investigation. Emily started by retracing Jason's steps. She pored over his notes, trying to piece together his last movements. She interviewed the townspeople, many of whom were reluctant to talk about the church. Despite their warnings and her own fears, Emily knew she had to go to St. Anselm's herself. On a chilly evening in early spring, Emily set out for the church. She carried a flashlight, a camera, and a small bag of supplies. As she approached the decaying structure, she felt a wave of apprehension wash over her. But she steeled herself, knowing that she had to face whatever was inside. The doors creaked open just as they had for Jason, and Emily stepped into the dim interior. The scent of mildew and decay was overpowering, and she covered her nose with her sleeve. She turned on her flashlight, the beam revealing the same dilapidated pews and stained glass remnants her brother had described. She called out his name, her voice echoing through the empty space. There was no response, only the sound of the wind howling outside. Emily began her search methodically, just as Jason had, moving from the entrance to the altar. She took photographs and made notes, but found nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't until she reached the pulpit that she felt the temperature drop. Her breath misted in the air and a chill ran down her spine. The Bible lay open on the pulpit, its pages stained with blood. Emily's heart pounded as she examined it, noting the same strange symbols her brother had described. As she traced the symbols with her finger, the whispers began. They were soft at first, barely audible, but they grew louder and more insistent. Emily's flashlight flickered, and she felt a presence behind her. She turned slowly, her flashlight beam revealing a figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes glowing a sickly yellow, and its mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. "Welcome," the figure hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "I've been waiting for you." Emily's fear turned to determination. She stood her ground, clutching her flashlight tightly. "What did you do to my brother?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the terror she felt. The figure laughed, a deep, guttural sound that echoed through the church. "He belongs to me now, just as you will." Emily's mind raced. She had to find a way to break whatever hold this entity had over her brother. She remembered the symbols in the Bible, the way they seemed to writhe and shift. Desperate, she grabbed the Bible and began to read the symbols aloud, hoping to disrupt the entity's power. The figure recoiled, its grin fading as Emily's voice grew stronger. The whispers intensified, but Emily continued, her voice rising above the din. The air crackled with energy, and the figure's form wavered. With a final, defiant shout, Emily spoke the last of the symbols. The figure let out a piercing scream, its form dissolving into smoke. The church was plunged into silence, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Emily fell to her knees, clutching the Bible to her chest. She felt a presence beside her and looked up to see her brother standing there, his face pale but alive. "Jason," she cried, throwing her arms around him. Jason hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Emily, you saved me. I don't know how, but you saved me." They left the church together, the storm outside abating as they stepped into the fresh morning air. Jason explained that he had been trapped in a nightmare, unable to escape the entity's grasp until Emily broke the spell. Together they returned to Ashford, determined to put the past behind them. The legend of St. Anselm's Church would live on, but it no longer held any power over them. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. From that day on, Emily and Jason dedicated themselves to helping others who had encountered the supernatural. They used their experiences to shed light on the unknown, bringing hope to those who had lost loved ones to the darkness. And though they never forgot the horrors they had faced, they knew that as long as they stood together, they could overcome anything. Also in the end, just don't forget, it wasn't just a puppy, so you better click that subscribe button.